Welcome back. And as we earlier said, of course, our main topic today is going to be talking about President Sisi's attendance of the 74th session of the UN Security Council. And of course, as we all know, that he gave a very impressive speech that was hailed by world leaders, and on top of them, the US President Donald Trump, and a very expressive statement was given by President Trump explicitly over President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the amount of respect he held for Egypt, the Egyptian administration, and on top of it, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and his policies. Of course, as we all know, that President Sisi gave a speech that revolved about four main pillars that he focused over explicitly, and he talked in detail about our achievements, about how far have we come. He talked about Africa, he talked about economy, and he talked about general policies in general of the world. And he held several meetings with world leaders, with entrepreneurs, with the US administrators. And we're going to be talking in detail about this with our prominent guest, Dr. Zeinab Nawar, a lecturer of economics. Good morning, Dr. Nawar.
Good morning.
Good morning, doctor. So first of all, before we proceed, I would like to take your insight on the speech that was delivered by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the domains it tackled.
Yes, the president in his speech at the General Assembly meeting, actually he gave a lot of messages. It's pillars, but also it's messages that is related to the Egyptians and to Egypt, to the Middle East, to Africa, and even to the world. The president had talked about Egypt and the economic reform we had worked on in Egypt. And also the president talked about how we just confronted terrorism in Egypt and the effort that we had made, which was very important to highlight in this meeting. Also the president talked about Africa and the importance of the collaboration between the African countries, and this is what Egypt is seeking to do nowadays through our heading to the African Union. Even the president had talked about the Center for Reconstruction and Development for the African countries, which is a very prominent step from the president to help the African countries to finance the development plans. Also, the president highlighted very important thing, which is aid to African countries, which is very important thing because the aid as a tool could help much the development of communities and also could work against the communities. So the president said the importance that the international institutions is to give proper aid and proper finance to the African countries, which is very important. The president talked about the Middle East crisis. Of course, we have crisis in Syria, in Libya, the Palestinian cause, and what is happening in Yemen, and how these all crises would affect the resources in the Middle East, and also affect the depletion of the resources for the citizens and the people of the Middle East. So actually, the president had tackled a lot of dimensions, a lot of issues. And the main thing is fighting terrorism, which needs a collaboration between the different countries around the world to confront this phenomena and to stop it because its effect on development. The thing that the president also highlighted, and which was very important also, the issue of the dam in Ethiopia, Renaissance Dam, and how that Egypt is trying to resolve the situation for the Nile Basin countries. And I think this is a good approach from the president, is to highlight all of these things and all of these messages. And I do think that the leaders of the world should take what the president said in terms of messages seriously, because it's not only the problems that is occurring in the Africa, it's worldwide problems.
Right. Let's first, before we delve into detail about each of these topics one by one, or pillars, let's talk about Egypt's image that has been badly assassinated earlier after June 30th revolution by the media outlets, and all the stories, the fake stories that was taken over Egypt. How Egypt have succeeded in reflecting the right image, how Egypt have retained its leading role, how Egypt have taken the lead role in the region and especially in Africa, and recognized finally by the superpowers, and that was very much reflected by the statements of President Donald Trump when he was reflecting how he thought about Egypt currently, and he talked about President al-Sisi, and it was quoted in all the media outlets.
Yes.
This have created an atmosphere of stability, an atmosphere of an inviting atmosphere for investment, an inviting atmosphere for collaboration and partnership with Egypt for all world leaders. How do you see that?
Of course, I say that when watching the bilateral meeting between the President Sisi and the President Trump, you will see that also Trump had made good messages about Egypt and saying that the economic reform was successful, and he said that even the President had made hard work, which is not easy. So all of this is very important messages. I think that we shouldn't be worried about our image, because it's clear now for the international community and through the IMF reports and through even the Egyptians who travel abroad, is to give good messages about our country. And this was reflected in the President Trump speech about Egypt. What we want to do in Egypt, yani, what is the bottom line of the economic reform and what all the effort that the President Sisi is doing? He wants to create jobs. He wants people to live in a good standard of living. So creating jobs means getting more investment into our country. So one of these channels is to bring foreign investment. So when the President Trump is saying that Egypt had done a good effort in the economic reform, this gives direct messages to the US businessmen to come and to invest in Egypt. And this is what we want to do. For every Egyptian, you should reflect a good image for your country, because if you didn't do so, you are harming your economy and you're harming your country. Because once you will give a wrong message about your country, this means that, of course, you have the word of mouth. Whenever you go, whenever you travel, if you give a negative image about your country, you are hurting the citizens at your country. So I think that the image about Egypt, it became much better. I even saw it when I traveled to India. I traveled to India a month ago, and I met several academics in 4 universities. I met government officials in one of the universities. So they started to talk with me. Yes, Egypt, we have done, and even I talked with them, we had done an economic reform. We have opportunities at our country. So why won't your companies come and invest in our country? So this is the role of us as Egyptians, and this is what we should do.
Well, talking about the economic status so far and the unprecedented achievements that everyone can feel, maybe yes, we have some challenges, but just we need to remember how we were in the past some years ago and where are we now. We are just take a look, looking at the infrastructure, looking at the production, looking at the new cities, looking at what happened when it comes to education and universities, the new universities that opened in Egypt so far. Talking about Egypt as the fastest economic growth as reported by international reports. How do you see this and the impact of this?
Last time I just talked about numbers. I said that we achieved economic growth of 5.3%. We had a very ambitious plan for working infrastructure projects. I will give another evidence this time from my travel also to India. First, what we had achieved in Egypt, I traveled to France 2012, and I was in a meeting representing the Egyptian government. And you can imagine this meeting, I didn't have anything to tell about plans that we do have in Egypt, achievement. We don't have anything at that time. Now when I traveled a month ago, 2019, I was very proud of my country, telling about achievements, telling about infrastructure projects, new plans, new hopes, things that we would like to do, economic growth, 5.3%. And we started to talk with even our counterpart in India, one of the 7 giant economies. And then you don't feel that there is, of course, we want to be better and we would like to be like India one day. But I'm saying that it doesn't, now we can't use numbers, because numbers is not enough to reflect what we are in. Maybe because we are here in Egypt and we can see the broader picture. If you go elsewhere and you started to talk about what happened in Egypt, you will see others, they are appreciating what's happening here. This is what is important for us as Egyptians, to appreciate what we are in, because others, they don't have that we do have. I would frankly, and unfortunately tell you, when I was in India, there is a lot of stresses on Modi, the Prime Minister in India, to do an infrastructure project, because there is a severe problem for infrastructure projects in India. The thing that we had truly and successfully achievement here in Egypt, although all the constraints that we do have. So if we'd like just to remember what we had been and what we are now, we are in a very much better situation. Even by numbers, it's much more better. Deficit became less. Economic growth that reached 5.6%. And if we succeeded as the economy of Egypt to achieve a higher economic growth for a sequence number of years, so this will definitely guarantee that we'll be a giant economy within 5, 6, or maybe 10 years. So these are the plans that and the hopes that we are hoping that will happen in the future. So it's in terms of number, we're achieving a higher economic growth. In terms of services, we started to have a better services, health services and health care, a pilot project for health services in Port Said, and also for the education, better educational system. We're trying to work on this. Better universities, and a lot of private universities now started to open. So there is a reform and there is an achievement in terms of number and in terms of reality. But it needs from people more understanding of the situation and to see the whole of the picture, not a part from it.
Also, in order to focus over part of President Abdel Fattah's speech when he talked about the economic leap or the economic development in Africa, especially also coinciding with our chairmanship to the African Union. A lot of mega projects have been taken over here in Egypt in order to create a suitable and inviting atmosphere for the investors. So President Abdel Fattah Sisi was talking about that and the partnership with Africa at the same time. He focused about these points in his speech at the Security Council.
Yes, yes. Yes, actually the President had talked several times about helping and supporting the African countries. Now we are just having a huge experience in a lot of pillars. The economic reform process itself, we had an experience in it. The infrastructure project, the reform we had done in the rules and regulations for investments, and also what we had done for the rules and regulations even for the small and medium enterprises that we had talked about 2 weeks ago. So we became like a hub of knowledge and information that we do feel that the African leaders can benefit from us. Of course, the President is saying that we can help you in certain pillars, and it depends on the African leaders of the African countries themselves to try and to come to us and to cooperate with us and asking for more support and for more help, because it will be a win-win situation. Because at the end, we are partners in one continent, we are partners in our interest, and also we'll be partners in trade. So we will have to be on a win-win stance. And it's up to the government leaders is to take an advantage from the situation and from the Egypt that is heading now the African Union, and to get the maximum benefit that they can do and they can get from us. And of course, we can give our expertise, because we had several talk about how can Egypt can benefit even the African countries in terms of the maritime, the infrastructure work at ports, road infrastructure, the type of infrastructure work that we had done everywhere, several industries that we are working on. All of this could be a very good hub of information that the African countries would take advantage from.
Talking about such important events, there is another thing that we need to tackle, the meetings that usually takes part on the sideline of any of these events. So definitely we all have seen the meetings that were held by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi with most of the head of states and world leaders and decision makers, and definitely this will have an impact again on the economy, because now we can never separate economy from political issues, and we understand now that it's something very, very important when you are in good terms with the president himself. I mean, the relation between head of states, because this will be reflected on the economic status. They will be reflected on the image of the country, in addition, of course, of attracting foreign investments to Egypt.
Yes, of course, the president have had a lot of bilateral meetings with different world leaders. This is also important because it gives another message that if the investors in a certain country, they're saying their president is having a talk with our president, so they feel that there is a progress in our country. So, of course, they would do their homework by doing an investigation of the macroeconomic indicators and what's going on in the country, and also the business environment and all of this. But at least on primary base, they will feel that, yes, there is no problem to come and invest in a country like Egypt, which we would like that to happen. And also the president is trying to give not only messages for Egypt, but also for Africa. He is asking the world leaders to come and invest in Egypt and also in Africa. So I think the president is doing a great role on this, because he's not thinking about Egypt in just only as a border of Egypt. No, Egypt as a part of a bigger continent. If the continent is okay, if more FDIs is coming into the continent, this means that better economic situation for the continent and also for Egypt. The president also has a bilateral meeting with the President Trump, with the President of France, of Italy, and also he has a meeting with the President, with the Prime Minister of India, Modi. That I would suggest that to have a longer bilateral meetings with the Prime Minister of India, because India is a very promising economy, and we can, as Egyptians and also as countries in Africa, to benefit from India. And this is what I'm just suggesting this to occur in future, is to look for the countries that they have a bigger potential and see what they do have and try to get their experience, whether it's technology, in entrepreneurship, in education, and we can give them our experience in infrastructure projects and in mega projects.
Dr. Nawar, also at the healthcare summit, President Sisi focused over the comprehensive healthcare, and he reflected his keenness over developing and upgrading, empowering the health file in Africa in general. If you'd like to elaborate over this.
Now, the speech of the president in the comprehensive healthcare summit was very clear by saying that actually the president had made a link between the health services and development. You cannot achieve development in any country without guaranteeing a good health services to its citizen. So a comprehensive health care, this is something that should be a must to any community. And even the president started to talk about our initiatives in dealing with virus C, and the number of people that have been treated. More than 1 million Egyptian people have been treated from virus C, and also the several initiatives for women and for children. So actually the president is highlighting a new way to deal with if a country is having a certain health issue. So this initiative, and along with the other initiatives, helped much to improve the health of the Egyptians. And also the president highlighted that the initiative of virus C will be started to work also for the African countries. So from this standpoint, it's again that Egypt is giving its experience to other African countries and supporting and helping them. So it's not about achieving good health for the Egyptians, but also for the Africans as well. This is the most important thing that we have to look at now, that we have to look to the broader picture, to our continent, and to work for the peace and security, and also to have a good relations with the African countries.
In addition to this, also the president addressed the climate summit, and they tackled the environmental issues and all of this. And definitely this is now the world problem, and it's one of the main challenges, actually, not maybe not in Europe, not in the United States, but in Africa. The president was not only talking about Egypt, but about the African continent in general, and how we need to work a lot, and actually the major powers, they need to work a lot and invest in this respect, talking about environmental affairs. And we have seen the impact of the climate change in Europe as well.
Yes, the climate change, the effect of the climate change is not in Africa, it's in everywhere in the world. So it needs
but I mean the African continent will be the most one that is going to suffer, actually.
And even when I went to India, they have suffered in India also. In each country in the world, there is a fact because of the climate change. So climate change, actually the President Fattah Sisi is talking about the climate change, and also other leaders of the world are talking about the climate change. So when you have such a call from the President and also from other presidents, so it needs a worldwide collaboration between the countries, and especially USA and Europe, because those are the most countries who are the cause of what we are having
responsible
now,
for this.
the cause of the depletion of the resources in Africa. Some of the agriculture products have been just removed from the ground because of this temperature.
Fires,
we do have the fires that we do have everywhere. The spread in diseases in some of the continents of the world that started new diseases to appear because of the climate change. So it has to have a serious cooperation between the world leaders, other than this, that will face by more crisis. And this is what we want it to be and to happen, because we still want development to our societies and our nations. And the climate change, it works against our societies and the development of our communities. So also the messages of the climate change from the President Fattah Sisi was very clear, and it's very important. It's very important to be highlighted.
Right. We move on to a very important file that, or pillar that the President talked about, which is the, in general, which is terrorism. He talked about terrorism and conquering terrorism, and Egypt have come a long way, and it even set a very good role model and example to the whole world, and it was even recognized by the UN as an international community itself. It was sharing. It gave Egypt a chairmanship of one of the general committees for standing up for fighting terrorism. The year before last year. He talked about fighting terrorism. He talked about the Yemeni file, the Iraqi, the Libyan, and all that. And he talked about the Middle East crisis and how the Palestinian cause should be rooted out and solved, because it's the foundation of all stability inside the region.
Right. The President was very keen to talk about the crisis and the problem that is happening in the Middle East. And there is a hopes that one day there will be a resolution for these problems, and there is some sort of political and economic and social stability to occur in this country, because once there is a stability for this country, so there is a stability for all of the region and also for Egypt. But this is what we are hoping for, and this is what the President is calling for. But I think, again, it's back to the countries themselves and the leaders of these countries to work on a resolve of these issues, and also for the UN and the Security Council. But what I want to stress on is the issue of the compacting terrorism, and how the President is talking about, and in several occasions and several events, he's just highlighting the issue that we can, as Egypt, to offer to the world our experience in dealing with terrorism, how we had done a lot of effort to deal with terrorism. And this is very important message from the President, because terrorism, it's not in the Africa, it's not because here in Egypt we're just fighting terrorism. It's also everywhere. Again, I will give you like an evidence, because I just traveled in India a few days ago. You cannot imagine that I was in a Hindu temple, and then I found that a lot of army surrounding this Hindu temple. What's wrong with this? Because in India, people are afraid from these bombing attacks and terrorism attacks. So I want to stress on a thing, that the speech, and when the President Fattah Sisi is talking about terrorism, he's talking about something that is related to our daily life. Maybe here in Egypt we can see it much because we have stability and we can feel it. But in other countries, people on daily basis, they feel it. People, they are afraid because of this Islamic radicalist that is going to do a bombing attack to any place in India, for example. So people are so afraid. When you feel that people are so afraid, they will not be able to work, they will not be able to develop their economies. So fighting terrorism, it's very important thing for the lives of people, not in Egypt, but also in Africa and also for the world. If we like to talk about an international peace, an international order, it will not happen if it should be the case that there should be a collaboration, and a strong collaboration between the countries to fight these terrorist organizations, and to stop and to cut any funding to these organizations, the use of media platform. This should be seriously done, because we cannot talk about development, we cannot talk about anything unless we solve this critical thing. And this is what the President is saying in a lot of events, and he keeps saying this, and he's keeping also offering our experience to deal with this issue. And I think that a lot of countries can take our experience seriously and can think of the implementation of our experience, because we have done a lot. in fighting terrorism, and they should also do this from their parts.
Just to continue talking about the political files, and the president is always keen to talking about the situation in the region, and we understand what's going on around us. And on Wednesday, actually, the president of the Washington-based Middle East Institute said that actually Egypt should be granted the idea of solving all the challenges and conflicts taking place here in the Middle East instead of the United States, because Egypt is the only country that is aware of the situation and aware of all the challenges of our neighbors here, whether we're talking about, as we mentioned, talking about Yemen, talking about Syria, about Libya, about Sudan, about all these countries, and talking also about the idea that the president called for the idea of removing Sudan from the list as a country funding terrorism, especially with all respect of all they are doing right now. How do you read this?
I read this, but it's an extensive effort from the president, because what's happening in the Middle East now, it's not an easy thing. A chaos that has started to occur in Yemen and Libya and even in some Arab countries. So this is the present effort to just highlight the issues of these countries, but to what we're going to reach out of this. Egypt has, of course, because of our history, and we are one of the biggest countries in Africa and the Middle East, and we have our own role towards these countries, which we do hope that it will achieve something one day. But the problem that these countries started to have, and the case that they do have, it's very much an in-depth. And this is what we are trying, this is what the president is trying to do, is to resolve and to work into more peace and security for these communities. But again, it's back to the leaders and the communities itself, is to have the decision to stay in peace or to stay in war and in this and such chaos.
Right, Dr. Zeinab Nawar, you are an economic lecturer or lecturer of economics. Thank you very much for coming over. We really appreciate you coming over and giving us this valuable input. Thank you for coming. You have a beautiful day.
Thank you, dear. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I guess with this, we come to the end of our breakfast show for today. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Dina.
My pleasure.
So actually, you were in the company of my colleague Dina Hussein and myself, Nashwa Rashid. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more coming up on Nile TV International.